right. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. First item is discussion of the formal agenda.
I want to talk about teamwork and increased communication among board members. We've got a subject matter, which is the council for trust lines, but just generally speaking, whatever we can do to enhance it and expand it, I want to raise awareness or at least consideration of it.
Okay, and you want that as a work session item?
Sure.
Okay,
I think if we labeled it council forest trust lands and opened it as a work session, that way we can discuss strategy, pros and cons as a board.
okay, so is this about the forest trust lands or is this about in general?
It has a specific, I have a general and specific.
Okay,
Does that answer? There's much for you.
well, I'm sure we can, I think we talked a little bit about this, council
You and I
forest
did,
trust.
yeah.
You know, I talked with Dawn earlier, so we were looking at some dates where we don't have anything on the agenda this evening. We can go on to the agenda review and the rolling agenda. And then what date would we be able
Well,
to do
it
that?
depends on if it's a larger conversation, or I think we could get the CFTLC conversation sooner than later if that is
That would be-
helpful.
If you want me to run in November, we got to have a conversation.
Because we could do that CFTLC conversation as early as next week's work session. It's a virtual one,
I would prefer in person just because I'm usually juggling kids.
or so we could do it.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna be gone on the 9th. I'm gonna be in Indianapolis, so I was talking with Dawn about the second
Hmm.
work session, or if we're gonna do it in an evening, would have to be the 23rd.
The 23rd would be fine, wouldn't it?
October 5th.
Okay,
Okay, we'll go ahead and put a placeholder for that.
thank you.
And then for the larger discussion,
Can we fold it in or is that
We-
too big?
we may
I'd
not,
like, what do you want to talk about?
I don't think we talk to each other enough.
Okay,
I want us to have a discussion of the role that communication plays in our perception of our role as commissioners, as individuals, with each other, with staff, particularly the liaison assignment. I mean, I do a bunch of stuff, other people do a bunch of stuff. How do we communicate with each other about the liaison assignments particularly? Because they're meaningful. They should be enhancing and making more robust, informing really what we're doing as a county.
I completely agree with you. I don't know what you're driving at, but I completely
We don't
agree
have
that
enough time to talk to each other.
we have time at each meeting to talk about our liaison assignments.
I don't think that's equal.
Well, I'm happy to have a broader discussion, but I think everybody has to be on the same team as far as communication.
I do, that's
So what people,
the point, yeah.
if people are struggling in their liaison, they gotta tell
Hmm.
people.
But,
And-
but more than, yes,
Okay.
yes, that, and how do we share the gist of what we're doing out there for Clatsop County with each other? So that everybody else knows the impact of our liaison assignment, not to, you know.
I think that's fine. There's nothing that stops anybody from communicating with anyone. So I'm happy to discuss this at any time, to discuss it in general, but if we're talking about it during a meeting, I guess I'd like to know what our goal is.
When I call people, I want them to call me back. I want it to be a priority. I want it to be substantive. I want it to be regular. Because I want to know that what I'm doing fits all of it and that all of us
I agree.
see it. I don't feel like I see what everybody else does. I don't feel like they see what I do. And I think that we would be more effective as a board if we spent more time one-on-one or all together talking about that. Because when I sit up on the dais, it's at night, everybody's, I heard, and nobody wants to sit and have a full discussion about the meaning of every meeting that any of us go to. That's it. To make it easy and productive.
It goes both ways, and I would like to have discussion too, when people are gonna step down from positions, I'd like to know in advance. That kind of bothers me. It's a little
Sorry,
bit.
that was an,
And I'm stepping in to fill a position that's vacated.
my bad.
Okay. So I do appreciate that the increased communication is always good. We've talked about that at a number of opportunities. So I'm happy to have a broader discussion about it. And if there are some tools we can use, I'm open. Okay.
So Chair, if it might make sense, maybe we'll, some of this could fold into what may or may not like take place with the retreat too. And so, but maybe we can plug in sometime in November for that conversation and then figure out where it lands.
Yeah.
depending on-
It might fit very nicely when we're discussing liaison assignments with our new addition.
We'll be in January.
Which
So
will be
we
in
will
January.
be doing a
It would
reshuffling of
be-
liaison assignments in
It
January.
would be beneficial to have him part of the discussion. I think, because I mean, we're kind of the tail end of Commissioner Toyoka's service. That maybe this could be a wonderful fold in for that, so that it's good orientation for him.
We're not in January yet, so as soon as we get there,
Yeah.
we'll look at that.
Anything else on the rolling agenda?
If I might, sir, you'll notice on October 2nd, there's an EMS placeholder. If you look at your next week's agenda, it should be getting soon.
It's up there probably.
Number 3 is the ambulance service provision and plan amendments. What this is really going to be addressing is the letters that the county received from the Fire Defense Board about some concerns that they had about the EMS system. And so there's a response from the county, there's some responses from others in here, and the conversation with the Fire Defense Board continues, but there's a lot of background material here and some data. As your board reviews that, if you could let me know, let Justin know if you have any questions, and we'll be happy
Is
to.
it the data that I was hoping for?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
data in there about the actual staffing levels on different days and different shifts. So, so we just want to really be as transparent and consistent about communicating on the EMS system, since there's so many stakeholders in the system, and it is a team system. So that will be October 2nd, so just wanted to let you know that. The other is, we're trying to determine when we will be scheduling for the appointment of the Fair Board members. And so there's a question about how the board might want to pursue that. We just got the recruitment closed. We've got one more applicant. We have 6 total. Kyle and Monica have been meeting with all the applicants just to go over the fairgrounds, the MOU, just talking about how that all works, what their roles and responsibilities are. So we'll schedule that 6th one this week, hopefully on Friday. The question I guess I'm asking is, would the board like to interview any of the Fair Board applicants, or would you like to have the Fair Board make a recommendation, or both?
Could we do a joint session so that the Fair Board and ourselves all hears the same thing at the same time? And then kind of,
When would we do that? Because we have the joint, or,
the joint Fair Board meeting is 9:25. But that's a small allotment of time for interviews for potential Fair Board members.
for tonight.
No, it's October.
October 9th.
Okay. it's October 9th.
Oh,
So we can see if we can play with October 9th and create some more time, and if it works for the Fair Board, we could have a joint meeting if that's the board's.
if the Fair Board is able to show up, then they have the opportunity to show up. I just feel like I hesitate to make a decision for them because they need to be able to work together. But I also, them being only three, it's kind of a wonky situation for them to try to make a decision, and also because they have to do it in a vacuum, they can't talk to each other, or else it's public meeting law. And so,
Well, and just my sense as the county manager is that it's good to have the board of commissioners also be invested in those appointments, because ultimately you oftentimes get involved in
mhm,
fair issues, and so so I think if the board is interested in that, we can follow up with the fair board, with the fair board chair, and get their feedback and see if that would.
I do know that faster, better than later is what is necessary, because they're already pivoting for next year. And they're already looking for entertainment for next year's fair, so it'd be important to get.
We can try to do it on the 9th,
Okay.
we can figure out how to get it done. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else on the agenda? All right, we'll move on to our second topic, ordinance 24-19 SDR caps. And Gail Henriksen, our community development director, welcome.
You can-
Switch.
Okay, well, thank you and good evening. We are following up on a discussion that we started, well, a long time ago, but our most recent episode was on July 17th, where we, as staff, presented some additional information to your board and talked about the different potential for establishing caps and potential changes to the ordinance and the standards that regulate short-term rentals. And so based upon that feedback, our staff did put together a draft ordinance that looks at the possibilities of both a 7% and a 10% cap, which was the direction we received from your board. And so, I have control.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. Look, there we go. Okay, so ordinance 2419, which is in your packet this evening, does several different things. So first of all, we are looking at adding some new language to both sections, section 5.12 and section 5.24 in the Code of Regulations to establish those SDR caps. And there's a table in there that shows both the 7% and 10%, depending on the direction from your board. And what we would propose is that every year as our tax roll gets updated, that we would also update that table annually so that we are accounting for new growth and making sure that our caps are adjusting accordingly. We've also put in some language and some draft maps showing where those caps would apply. We're primarily looking on the west side of Highway 101, except for Arch Cape, where that zoning district covers both the east and the west sides of the highway. And then we put in the transfer language using that Cannon Beach language that the board looked at on July 17th and was in favor of at that time. And so that would allow limited transfers during the life of the permit holder, transferring into an LLC or for estate planning. But once that property is either sold or the holder passes away, then the permit would become void. And that's identical to what Cannon Beach has, yes.
So just so that I understand correctly, it can transfer into an LLC or it can transfer into like an estate type situation. But then if it is sold from that, then the permit, so if it's sold to an outside entity that is not like that family unit, then it would then not be eligible.
Right, so if
Okay.
I'm the permit holder and we hold the permit together, and so we want to transfer it into a trust, and then you want, as long as the person who was the permit holder is still part of the corporation or the trust or whatever, then the permit just can be transferred. But if I decide to sell my share to Commissioner Thompson or Chair
Yeah,
Quila,
an
then
outside entity.
yeah, that will change it, or if I were to pass away.
And what happens if, so I guess I worry about the transfer of the permit through family. Through will or through, I mean, I would like it to be able to transfer through family. Is there language that we could accomplish that.
There is, Gearhart has language that does exactly that,
Okay.
and so we can add that language
Okay.
to the ordinance.
Cause I'm less concerned, I mean, LLCs are kind of rare unless people know how to do that. And land trusts are kind of rare unless people know how to do that. I'm more concerned about the regular Joe Schmo passing away and then having their son or daughter
Yeah.
suddenly have this property. I want that property to be able to pass to the son and daughter so they can still visit and still have what makes our community so important, which is that beach house that the family visits.
Yeah, so there's, what we're talking about is the actual transfer of the SPR.
Yeah,
Okay,
and then that, I want that. I mean, we had a lovely email sent to us that talked about how this is how the family pays for the property and for the taxes. But it's also how it allows them to continue to come to the family home and visit. And so I don't want to break that ability for that family if, say, the owner, grandparent passes away. And then it's passed, I want that passing ability, that pass-through ability for, through will and trust, through will, I think, I don't know,
Or trust or whatever.
will or trust. Huh? Thank you, probate.
I knew we should have had you sit at the table, but, yeah.
Well, and I'm for that as well. I mean, I've tried to hold back and just let everybody else talk about this, because it's a really contentious issue. The way I look at it now, if we allow short-term rentals, we are allowing, I would say, a stratum of people who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. And that doesn't change with a generation. And the memories that are created by having a beach house, I hear a lot about that directly in my own ear from my kids and from my grandkids. So I don't want to just apply my particular set of values to it, but I think it's common that those family treasures are important and want to be continued. And my sense is it's better if we do that, because then we're keeping enough of the traditions alive and enough of the community character alive that it's not more and more commodified or left vacant. Because I'm very clear that sometimes the homes are purchased by people as an investment, and they don't want to come very much. They don't want to provide social capital. They'll provide as little financial input or loyalty or community building as possible, because it's an investment. I would rather have the human element and support the human element by allowing inheritance in a flexible but reasonable form.
Okay. Yeah, so I can work with county council and put that Gearhart language in there,
Mhm.
and we can take care of that.
And it's family, it's not, eighth cousin, 5 times removed who's purchasing it. It's
Immediate family?
well, I think direct line probate is, I think, a great way to describe it, because that would be an inheritance.
But I mean, inheritance could go
Could
to
you-
whoever
anybody.
the person wants to leave it to. I mean,
Oh, valid. Do you know where I'm going with this? Okay. Yeah. It's starting to find, I mean, thank you.
That's the intention, is
The
that
heart of it, I think, is what I'm trying to, not the financial,
Yeah, I'd be supportive of that as well.
okay. All right, so then moving on, we had talked a little bit in July about the renewal process. And the way it works is they get a notice before the permit expires, but we find that permits pass their expiration date and are lingering for various reasons. So we did add some language in there that says they do need to have it complete within 30 days of expiration. Yes.
I would like to verify our communication to them, because as we've seen with the taxes situation, how are we going to communicate to them that it needs to be renewed so that we don't have, oops, so I would like us to really kind of dial in this is the form of communication. If it's 2 addresses, great. If it's,
Well, if I may, but, because I have, smart people who write us letters. And well, Nancy Chase's point that, you know, it could happen that the way to remedy whatever deficiency is there isn't available timely. Does it make sense to allow on a case-by-case basis extenuating circumstances? Well, that gets a little slippery because sometimes the extenuating circumstances, I don't want to have to pay the money to do this. Well, that, I don't think that counts, but I also know the difficulty of getting people to do things. I tried to get new kitchen windows for, I don't know, 15 or 16 months. And it took that long to get them replaced. So,
So normally we run into those types of situations, Commissioner, when we have a brand new application in and the initial inspection is being done. And we find that the windows don't meet the height or the width or whatever. And that's usually where we see a lot of that time taken up. But once you have your permit and you've passed that inspection, your windows
it'd be okay.
should be okay. And you shouldn't have to be making those types of repairs unless you are adding on or doing something to your house that is triggering that type of inspection. So I don't foresee that being a problem when it comes to renewals.
I'm just thinking about the difficulty of getting a timely response from contractors to remedy something that comes up as a deficiency. If something collapses or, you know what I mean? I don't know exactly what the particulars might be. I just know that it's an ongoing challenge, and I wonder if we should allow a good faith effort that doesn't invite manipulation. I don't know if such a thing is possible, but I'd like us to work that balance.
Okay, because and I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just want to make sure that we're clear that at this point, they're 30 days past their permit, so they are not permitted at that point. I think we would, as staff, have concerns about allowing them to continue to rent when their permit has expired and they may have something that is a life safety issue.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
there is a balancing act to that, and we can look at if there's a possibility of some language that we might be able to add to address maybe non-life safety issues, but again, they would still be operating without an approved permit at that point.
I don't want them to be able to do that, but I want to be reasonable given the, life in the Oregon Post. But life safety is paramount. You know, mine was just a failed seal that made me nervous, but it didn't compromise life safety. It just had me fret. Life safety matters more than any of it.
So, but we'll look and see if there's language we can add.
well, and I feel like if they're repairing their home for some reason or another, there's no reason why they wouldn't want to reapply for a permit if their goal was to have, so this after 30 days expiration shouldn't come into play unless what, they're rebuilding their entire home, which then I think there can be communication with county staff on that, so.
Okay. All right, and then we talked about updating the cap table annually, and despite my wonderful math, I would ask GIS to actually do a little work to tweak those, make them a little more professional. And then on a lesser scale of proposed revisions, we just put in some language that would clarify how the appeal process works if for some reason a permit is ever revoked. To date, we have not revoked any permits, so, but there could be a day when that happens. We updated the Arch Cape section 5.24 in the code, just to bring it a little bit more into unison with the other section 5.12 and to add the good neighbor language, to add language about beach litter and beach fires.
Yeah, we talk about fires, because I have a neighbor whose house is right on the beach. And was there for 7 weeks straight and said there were beach fires every single night. What I've seen is that people build fires up on the rocks. And the way I understand it, the fires are supposed to be below the high tide line, so that if they don't put them out, the tide will put them out. And if they're on the rocks, that doesn't guarantee that. So I don't know if you've got time to check, but I'm concerned about, because I saw a bonfire, half the height of this room up on the rocks, which gave me pause for concern. I was assured by the people around the beach fire that it was fine, but, it scared the spit out of me.
Yeah, we as Clatsop County don't have jurisdiction over those fires on the beach, but, we did put some ORS language in there. I think it was ORS, but I will double check it.
Yeah, I'm just, if we can have links with things so that people can check it out, because, people want to do it too, but not necessarily what the rule says.
So I hesitate to add things to the good neighbor flyer that are outside of our jurisdiction and control. I get the heart behind it and the heart of saying, please don't litter on our beach, leave no trace. Please don't burn our trees down, leave no trace. But the problem is like with beach fires, that's state lands, that's a state highway. We don't have any ability to control that, even if we wanted to. And so I hesitate on inputting language in a county document that, that we can't call the sheriff's department on it, because so there's no conflict. How can we provide, I don't know, I'm just struggling with adding that language because we can't control it. We can't have a response to it. And, yeah.
So one thing that we could do is, we could put the contact information for the agency that has jurisdiction. The Good Neighbor flyer and our SPR regulations do cover lots of things that we don't have jurisdiction over, things like tsunami evacuation routes, what to do if there's a power outage, it's informative stuff. So I would consider that to fall under that category.
Yeah, I would, informative versus don't have a beach fire. I think I would love to be able to say to people during fire season, don't put us at risk.
What's up with that?
I would love to be able to say that, but it's not our place, and it's not that's not our circus or our monkey. Even though it ends up being our circus and monkey later on, it's who has the power in that situation, and it's not us.
I'm gonna push back on that one, because it is so terrifying what people do with fires on the beaches, on the rocks. And some of it's locals, some of it's tourists. I would be in favor of whenever and wherever and however we can, we help inform people and urge them to behave. Yeah, we won't jerk your license if you do this, but it would be really nice if you didn't burn down your neighbors' homes and kill them.
I mean, I would say that, what we would be very careful to not do is weaponize our good neighbor clause or our good neighbor flyer and have people policing the beach and people policing those fires. I think that raises a very unsafe situation for our folks. And I could see if we skated away from just being informative and went to almost policy creation in our verbiage, that we would weaponize our good neighbor flyer and then put our constituents in unsafe situations where they're arguing with people on the beach and accusing them of being short-term rental owners when they're not, they're just there visiting. So that's just.
I would agree with you, Commissioner Banks. I want to keep this informational and
Informational.
straightforward, simple, not get so many different,
Encouraging,
yeah.
leave no trace, yay.
And I think usually beach fires, it's not just the fire, it's the activity around the fire, and you're addressing that with the quiet hour, and some of these other things are addressing that.
And sometimes it's the fire.
And it's not just fire,
I think it's Burning Man away.
Only you can prevent forest fires, spot smoky on them.
Okay, so we will revise that language. And then, put something that is more towards the informational side into that. We did add, language about the secure trash containers and clarified how we would define secure so that it means your lid is closed, it stays closed, and your garbage isn't poking up and falling up. So, hopefully that will help address that situation. The Arch Cape, section of the short-term rental code, 5.24, didn't have any, citations about quiet hours or the good neighbor requirements. We require it, but just make it official. Just gonna add that in. And then we did some cleanup, just some typographical errors and trying to reorganize for clarity. So, and then again, these are my wonderful handcrafted maps that basically show the areas that are to the west of Highway 101. So working from north to south along the coast, it just shows the different areas that are in there. Our ordinance does cover Gearhart urban growth boundary, which normally we don't do that, but at the request of Gearhart, we do manage the short-term rentals there. Moving further south as you get towards the junction, and then south, going down towards Cannon Beach, and then to Cola State Park, the unincorporated areas. Further south, down to Hub Point, and then you'll see Arch Cape covers both sides of Highway 101, and all of Cove Beach is in there. Potential fiscal impacts, and I want to thank Andy Sullivan and Julia Myers. They helped put that, they didn't help, they put all that information together and came up with these estimates. So we've got the first column, this is based on current data. So right now we have 172 STRs, we've got just over 1,750 dwellings in the area we're talking about. And then looking at the permit difference, if you went from a 10% cap all the way down to a 1% cap, and the estimated potential revenue loss. So when we look at revenue loss, I want to emphasize that this does not happen overnight. It's not the board adopts an ordinance and then suddenly all the revenue drops off. It could be years and decades before we would see impacts if you adopted a cap that's less than 10%. So, and I put some reasons up here. There are a lot of variables and things that we just don't know how they will play out that could impact that.
Could I ask a methodology question? Because majority of the reductions will be in what I'd consider high rent districts. So when we looked at the losses with a 10%, that's going to cut in half the number of short-term rentals in Cove Beach, for example. That's generally, there's some cheaper ones. There's some $200 a night, but they're generally more than that. Do you know if the methodology just averaged or if it was site specific? I would guess it was the former because it would be extraordinarily complex to do it the other way. So I wonder if we might see more of a loss than we think we will. Even at 10%.
It could be, again, there are things that we don't know how this will play out because it could be that everyone continues to transfer their permit in Cove Beach for the next 30 years. And none of those STRs go away. It could be that something happens and there's a coastal erosion event and half of the STRs in Cove Beach fall into the ocean. And we have unexpected loss of income at that point. Not because people chose to, but because nature took care of it. You know, there are other things that we can't predict. We learned from pandemic that, you know, immediately at the start of pandemic, revenue dropped down and then it immediately rebounded and exceeded. So, yes.
Could we start at 10 and then just revisit this in a couple of years and see what that effect was? Like, I guess I'm just, I mean, the difference between 10 and 7 isn't that, I mean, it's $272,000-ish on average. And that would be maybe in 30 years, we saw that reduction. But I guess I'm just one to step into a new adventure cautiously and, start somewhere and then just commit to revisiting it and see, like, did it have positive impact, negative impact? Which way should we go? Should we tighten things up more? Should we leave them? That's kind of, I'm a cautious person sometimes. He's sitting here now and I'm like, oh man, what did I say?
Say anything. Circular members of the board, I think it's an interesting phenomenon. What's going to happen is that it's true that the caps will make it so that the number of STRs in any of these communities will not get worse.
Mhm.
So there's not going to be more, but the amount of time that it takes to get less is going to be significant. Some of these communities are over 20%, if I'm right. And so just to even get to 10 would take decades and decades and decades. So the difference between 10 and 7 at this juncture doesn't really matter that much because we're well above that now. And so I think, you could choose either and it's going to take a long time for us. The good news for the communities is it won't get worse, but we're not going to know. And so you could take the more, let's test this out. We'll take 10 and we'll just see, knowing that we're not going to be challenged by that threshold anytime soon. Or you could take 7 and do the same thing. But I just want to really, it isn't going to get worse, but it's going to be a generation before
we get there.
we get anywhere near there. And so I think that's,
I mean,
either one works fine. The only areas where it is really going to have any impact are for those that are under the threshold, because then it does create a cap eventually for those areas.
So I
Yeah.
like 10 and 10.
and it's- well, and I'm leaning towards, the major area of impact of Commissioner Thompson. And so I'm just giving ideas at this point.
So, like, well, pardon me if I could just say, I think we saw crescendo. I think we saw the legal challenge, in the referendum. There's a lot of personality-driven political things. And in some cases, a restraining order was involved. So people got in each other's faces in ways that just were unfortunate. If we can take this relatively calming approach that seems reasonable, and 10% is just an easy number to work with. If whatever you're doing, 10%, and you look at it, judge for impact, have community meetings if you want to. People aren't shy about contacting us, but we could, when time came around that we decided we wanted to test it out, we could ask for feedback.
I just don't want to weaponize the process. That's the biggest thing. Well, weaponize us in the process, I think. So I don't want it to be a political, what's best in politics. I want it to be like, this is a county as a whole. How can we be soft? And how can we prevent us being used to weaponize this process? And the county being used to weaponize this process. Oops, you're 31 days outside of your permit, nana boo boo. I don't want that type of mentality. I want good communication out of this and people to not lose their family homes. And I think that at the end of the day, the heart is maintaining the heart in our community, that beach house vibe. Those families being able to still continue to visit and then also sustain their property because it's expensive by using the short-term rental process. I don't want to lose that. I'm very well aware that we have agencies and companies that own these homes. I'm well aware, but the Oregon coast has always been a beach house situation. And so I'm just, you know, wanting it to be soft.
Well, there's been a lot of work done on this for a long period
Yes.
of time. I really appreciate all you've done, Gail, and I think we really have gone into the details on this.
I have one more question.
Okay.
I always have
Oh,
one more
man.
question.
Okay, I'm ready.
If you. We had, discussed with your board back in July, potentially looking at a fee increase and phasing that in over, about a year period. And the reason for that is because we did do, an inventory of all the costs associated with the different departments and staff who touch the short-term rental permits, whether it's before it's issuing it or co-compliance afterwards. And our permit cost is roughly $1,400 per permit for a 2-year permit. Our current fee is $550, so we are more or less subsidizing each permit that comes through. And that equates at the current number of permits we have right now to just over 140,000 every 2 years. So we're subsidizing. We had talked last about doing a phase-in of a fee increase going up to $1,000 immediately, because the people who renewed are gonna be good until 2025. So, but then they would have notice that as of July 1st, if your board agreed, that the permit fee would go up to $1,500 for a 2-year permit. And I just wanted some information about that. Yeah.
Completely read, yeah. Commissioner Bailey.
I just want us to communicate, with them, and I like the using it in increments versus what happened sadly to our food carts. So just
We're
have,
we're
learning.
culture now about food carts, you know, it's a weird thing.
we're learning lessons about communication everywhere.
I was gonna say, there's a theme this
There's a
evening.
theme this evening, but I want us to take our lessons and run with it. So, I wonder about those who would have a fee increase in, say, next month. I wonder how that is going to, what impact that potentially will have. I fully support no longer subsidizing, these permits. We can't do that. We can't afford to do that. But just how do we get from point A to point B without, communicating, like, could we make this a January 1st thing and then just communicate until January 1st? Or a November thing? I mean, so many fun things are gonna happen in November. Why don't we do this?
Yeah.
We would have to bring the fee increase back
Has
to
to
your
come back.
board anyway,
Oh, okay.
so we could do that, in January. And then, as of July 1st, when we implement the new budget, have it
Okay.
would go up. There should not be anybody impacted by this interim fee increase, because when we adopted the ordinance in 2018, we had a 5-year permit.
Okay,
Those permits all came up in 2023 for renewal. And then they will run out starting in probably March and April of 2025.
Okay.
So they will have about a 5 to 6 month notice
wonderful.
that the fee at that point will be $1,000
Okay,
and then going up to 1,500.
so nobody's getting anything next month. That's kind
Now,
of what I want.
anybody who comes in for a new permit though, who might be eligible.
Yeah.
Would pay the new fee.
That's fine. No, I just didn't want anybody to get hit with something in the middle of property tax season. When we're already paying our property taxes, hey, here's an extra, I don't know, $500 that you now have. So,
The person now would pay a $1,500 fee or $1,000.
So, if your board adopts, goes with the phasing, and they came in, say you adopt at the first meeting in January, and they came in at the end of January, they would pay $1,000. And then if they came in on July 2nd,
They'd pay $1,500.
$1,500.
so,
Please send that in.
so I'm gonna ask an interesting question here, because I'm supporting the phasing situation, but with the information you provided, that really it doesn't impact anybody up until a certain point in time. Why don't we just go and no longer subsidize? And new year, new us, you know?
I would tend to agree with 1,500.
Yeah, because if we're not, impacting anybody until they have to renew, and they have almost a full year before that renewal.
No, not quite a full year. I think the renewals will start occurring in probably March or April next year.
That's
I still
Six
think it,
months, they could adjust their rates and make up the difference, I think, between.
They may be
now.
booked ahead at a particular, see, that's the thing that makes it complicated.
Yeah,
Whatever rule we put in, they've already booked people, so if we change things, they're in a rebooking or changing or eating something mode.
well, why don't we just do new permits 1,500 and then ease our other folks in through the 1,000 mark? And then the 15, I don't know.
I would
all
tend to
one-
just 1,500, we can, I mean, we're subsidizing it now, so.
Yeah, and we can't subsidize this
I
next
don't, we
year.
don't have any justification for why we're doing that.
I hear that and I bear your angst. On the other hand, part of that expense was the plethora we had of complaints that weren't validated. So I would expect the cost to go down because, well,
I mean,
don't
I think you have high hopes that the complaints are gonna go away. I foresee the complaints are gonna stay the same because they have hope of canceling somebody's short-term rental permit and not being able to have it
do you
renewed.
have an opinion on that or would you just?
I'm sorry.
I can only say
She's
that.
watching us
So,
back and
well,
forth.
no, and I understand what you're both concerned about, and I know that a large expense for code compliance is the code compliance hotline to help address complaints when we are not here on evenings, weekends, and holidays. So that is a big part of the code compliance expense. I will say that we still are receiving. We've recently had a spate of complaints about a particular property for not the highest level, not life safety issues, but very lower level non-compliance issues. So I think that we'll still continue to see complaints.
Humanity will continue, is that the idea?
Yes, indeed.
See, there I went, we were gonna fix them.
Oh,
but
sorry.
no. Yeah, well, okay, yeah. Yeah, okay.
I do like.
So
the
are we,
though.
are we okay then, the 1,500?
I mean,
And you want to begin that in January, bring that back in January.
Mhm.
because
For new ones.
For new-
for new ones.
And then for the
And then-
renewals, how do you want to handle those?
I thought we would do the 1,500 for renewal starting in July, right? Or is that, am I wrong on that?
Well, it's up to your board. The renewals are probably going to start in March and
Okay.
April.
Well, okay, March or April, 1,500.
Yeah.
So we'll bring the fee change in January and then it'll just be in place for
And
everyone.
in the communications, can we please explain to everyone we are subsidizing this situation and we can no longer afford to subsidize it? We're sorry. But with,
Good.
I did it again.
It's always,
Fairly frisky tonight, sorry guys.
I only don't sit at the table because I can't see
Oh, okay.
the screen, but, what I would say is that, I mean, just so your board knows, I mean, this subsidy issue is a broader issue that we're gonna be coming back to your board and currently talking about on October 9th. So I think that your approach to the STRs is consistent with the approach we're gonna be asking you to take with the TLT and the impacts that
I mean-
on one service area, which is the jail, knowing that there is gonna be legislation to try to change the distribution for certain counties going forward. But this is gonna be a constant theme because we all know that the impacts of tourism are eroding service levels
yeah.
to other community members. And so that's just, so you're doing it this way will be consistent with what we'll be asking your board to consider in other areas, so.
Well, and I'm continually looking down the pipeline of we're losing millions. And like, we can't afford to lose millions. We can't afford to subsidize anything moving forward. And, there's no legislative guarantee, either from the Council of Forest Trust Lands, AOC, or really anywhere else. And so,
And I think,
we would love guarantees. I'd love a
well,
guarantee.
and I think that's why what we'll be talking to you about is really what are the things that the Board of Commissioners is the decision maker on, that we can move the needle financially because there are things, and TLT happens to be one of them, you know, because part of all the conversations with Orla was, we don't want to see the methodology change, we'd rather have you increase the rate. And so the rate is something that the county has control over. It doesn't mean that we're not gonna advocate at the state level for some more discretion, but right now there's a lot happening to us.
Mhm.
And I think we need to really be circumspect on what are those opportunities for us to actually control our destiny a little bit more, because the stakes are too high not to maintain services and service level.
So we talked this afternoon, and part of that 70% that we have to spend on tourism-related promotion or facilities. I mean, if we had bathrooms that we built and we had parking lots where people could be charged, and we could actually do some extra enforcement to keep them off the sides and gullies and the highways, the ditches, you know, I could see some rationale for that, because there's a missing infrastructure that isn't here that could be, that would help the quality of life for everybody. Can't pay for maintenance, but we could build them and then work with our state partners to maintain them. And
Well, I
So
think,
isn't there a state law against billing for recreation?
so there's the whole thing about recreation, you can charge for parking, but
Oh, okay.
and then you get qualified immunity. But I think that, you know, what the biggest thing is no matter what happens with the TLT, under the current distribution, 70% of it's still gonna be set aside for tourism promotion and tourism facilities. We gave the 70% of the 1 cent to the cities. And if we ever, you know, when we talk to your board, what we'll be talking about is that if the board ever saw a path to increase it, that we wouldn't give that 70% to the cities. We would want the Board of Commissioners to decide what the highest and best use of those funds are. And then one option is to work with state parks, work with other, you know, other tourism infrastructure providers to figure out how to deal with some of the issues which we know are consistent in certain areas like bathroom accessibility. May not be the county building them, but it could be us funding them with our TLT dollars so that the state can build them. I mean, there's just, or there could be other partners. Could be city, it could be cities, it could be special districts, but just finding what the right infrastructure is.
I feel like if we are gonna be, I mean, tourism isn't gonna go away. Despite, you know, many folks not enjoying tourism. But if we are creative with the definition and build facilities that support and make the tourism safer, and more accessible and, you know, nicer, that would be beneficial, I think.
City of Cannon Beach spends an extraordinary amount of money on bathrooms. And I was in one today. It's just like being in prison. But you know what I mean? That's because people destroyed them. So that's all they can do. And if we said to Cannon Beach, well, we're not gonna give you a bunch of bathrooms, I bet they're giving me the street.
Yeah, or then build the bathroom.
I mean, can we pay for service for that?
No,
Yeah,
we
that's the
can't do
problem.
maintenance.
Not with the.
Can't
not
do
with-
maintenance, of course not, that would be too easy.
But I think, you know, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
the county still really needs to advocate, and other counties do too, it's not just us, and same with the cities. I mean, LOC is gonna come out with their own legislative concept likely, but is that we all see that there's writing on the wall that the distribution right now is not equitable in terms of addressing the impact. And, you know, hopefully the legislature will help us, but if they don't, I still feel strongly that we have to use manifest destiny where we have it, because there's so many things we don't control. I mean,
Yeah.
just too much is happening to us.
yeah.
Well, now is the appropriate time to say, I appreciate all the work that
Yes.
Gail and the community development, I mean, we've been in the weeds on this for years.
Mhm.
And
Good
I'm
job,
glad that we're
Gail.
actually coming to the end here. I think
you like
The
it?
discussion we had, not really. I think we're at-
So much fun.
I agree with the approach, though, the 10%. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Making it so that this is something that can be passed down to immediate family, I think makes sense.
Okay.
And then, yes, going right to the $1,500 as the fee
For the new-
for the
Yeah,
new ones.
because I feel
And
that
then
gives
renewals.
them,
And then renewals.
I mean, there is a runway present. It's not next month. And so I feel like that
And
is
we
okay.
will communicate.
And I made a note.
Yay.
So we,
Wait, just one more thing, just for the record, thank you for investigating what it would take to deal with the situation in my neighborhood, which is half black with half Tillamook. It's so complicated, we'll just leave them
Yeah.
two different universes separated by a street.
And thank you for the email regarding the hotel, difference between us and
Lincoln.
that
Lincoln.
was very enlightening. I didn't
That
realize.
was huge. I didn't realize that they are so very different than we are, in capacity.
Numbers, yeah.
Yeah, they have a much
Wow.
higher capacity.
All right, so we will be back then in November and December for your public hearings.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. All right, we've got 4 minutes.
I'll
We'll transition.
try not to make you stand up again.
I'll go with it. Okay, the Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Clerk of the Board, can we have the roll call?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Toyoka,
Commissioner Toyoka is excused.
Commissioner Webb,
Commissioner Webb is excused.
Commissioner Thompson. I'm here.
All right, I know that Commissioner Toyoka was joining us by phone, but he was having Wi-Fi connectivity. He's on a plane right now. So he's able to listen in on everything, and he provided some comments as well, so. I'll share those during my commissioner comments. All right, we had an opportunity to review the agenda during the work session. Any questions, comments? Are ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is a proclamation, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Laura Parker, Juvenile Probation Counselor. Welcome, Laura and Susan.
Shall I read the
Yes, welcome.
proclamation? All right. In the matter of proclaiming October 1st, 2024 through October 31st, 2024 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month, resolution and order. Whereas the first Domestic Violence Month was observed in October 1987, the same year that saw the initiation of the first National Domestic Violence Toll-Free Hotline, and in 1989, Congress designated October as the National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And whereas domestic violence is a pattern of assaultive and coercive behaviors, including physical, psychological, sexual, and economic, social, and stalking that are used to maintain power and control over a person's intimate partner. And whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's dignity, privacy, security, safety, and basic human rights, and victims should have help to find the compensation, comfort, and healing they need. And whereas 1 in every 3 women and 1 in every 4 men in the United States experience rape, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime, domestic violence is the single largest cause of injury and homicide for women. And whereas approximately 15.5 million children are exposed to domestic violence every year, children exposed to domestic violence experience terror, isolation, guilt, helplessness, and grief, and have a higher risk of engaging in criminal behavior and substance abuse and becoming victims of a crime. Whereas domestic violence impacts the health and well-being of our community, whereas it is incumbent on every citizen to play a role in preventing and ending domestic violence. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does proclaim October 1st through October 31st, 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Clatsop County, and all invitees, all community members, and local agencies to join in this month of observance by speaking out against domestic violence, raising awareness, and supporting survivors.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laura.
Yes.
I think we had a sobering kind of reminder of how important this is today. I think incident that happened in Astoria, and the city of Astoria Police dealing with it, and of course our thoughts, prayers go out to family members and the community as well. Do we have a motion on this?
I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 1st, 2024 through October 31st, 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and authorize the chair to read and then sign the proclamation.
I second that motion.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 1st, 2024 through October 31st, 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Well, thank you very much, Laura, and you read the proclamation for us, so we're good, and
Appreciate you and Susan both being here this evening.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. If I could, I would like to let the board know that we have a domestic violence, free skate night, with food available for attendees, so I'll leave the flyers out here.
fantastic, yeah.
It would be
Thank you.
wonderful if you could help me get the word out about that.
Definitely. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for leaving
And
those.
I'll leave pins for all of you, for Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the same place.
I
Thank you.
remember last year I wore purple for this, but I didn't wear purple.
You did last year.
I did last year, I wore purple.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, both of you.
Please don't roll off the side.
Not yet.
Next is a proclamation for the Great Shakeout Day and Jen Munson, Emergency Management Community Engagement. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
So thank you for considering the secondary proclamation this evening around the Great Shakeout event. So the fact is that you could be anywhere during the next earthquake. You could be at work, at home, at school, even on vacation. And it's true that what we do now has everything to do with our survival and our quick recovery after an earthquake. And research tells us that the more we practice, the more likely we are to respond instinctively and safely and correctly during a shakeout. And so it's important that we ask community members and ourselves, are you prepared to survive and recover quickly? Opportunity to practice how to be safer during earthquakes, and that is 3 mantras: drop, cover, and hold on. It's also an opportunity to encourage schools, employers, and communities to update their emergency plans and resources. Shameless plug, the county is putting on, once again, the Get Ready Fair this weekend. Please join us at Camp Rylea at 11 o'clock at Warrior Hall if you would like ideas about how to update your plans and supplies for an emergency event. So each year, Clatsop County registers as a local government organization and encourages all employees to participate in some way. Practice is essential, as with anything, in developing good habits. On October 17th at 10:17 a.m., millions will practice how to drop, cover, and hold in ways that accommodate their abilities, circumstances, and disabilities. Event registration in Clatsop County has steadily increased over the years, and we look forward to participating again this year. Thank you for considering this proclamation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jen.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions? Ready for a motion?
I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 17th, 2024 to be the Great Shakeout Day and authorize the chair to read and then sign the proclamation.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 17th, 2024 to be Great Shakeout Day and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming October 17th, 2024 to be the Great Shakeout Day in Clatsop County. Whereas the proximity of Clatsop County's coastline to the offshore Cascadia subduction zone make it vulnerable to local earthquakes and tsunamis. And whereas Clatsop County has no greater responsibility than ensuring the safety of its citizens and all those who visit our county. And whereas Clatsop County Emergency Management partners with federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, private, and volunteer agencies to educate individuals on local hazards, how to prepare for them, and whereas earthquake safety is a serious concern with our entire county at risk to seismic shaking and tsunami hazards. And whereas the best way to survive a natural disaster is to develop a preparedness plan for one's home, school, business, and family. And whereas being self-sufficient for at least 2 weeks after a natural disaster, as well as knowledge about what to do when disasters occur, is vital. All citizens, businesses, and government agencies are encouraged to participate in earthquake drills where they practice drop, cover, and hold on Great Shakeout Day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims October 17th, 2024 to be the Great Shakeout Day in Clatsop County and encourages all citizens to join in this observance by increasing their earthquake resilience and working towards creating a more prepared society. Dated this 25th day of September 2024, Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you so
And then
much.
this Saturday, Camp Riley at 11.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
All right, and we have one person to testify in person. Mary? You can state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Mary Ang, P.O. Box 12, Astoria. I wanted to especially, I was just, sorry I'm late, but I was really thrilled to hear that we're doing domestic violence awareness. I think the dynamics with homelessness and domestic violence are very profound because there's a lot of exposure, and women especially that I speak to, but it can be anyone, often feel very much surrounded. They feel at risk from many dangers. They may sometimes have more than one abuser. They have also been prosecuted for use of 911 when they feel a threat is legitimate. I've gotten calls from a domestic survivor who was feeling unsafe to call police because she didn't want to incur more charges or misinterpretation. Sometimes with the anti-snitch culture, women on the street feel unsafe to report violence, so they endure rapes, they endure abuse, and then when they finally strike out, or as they say, snap, their reaction is prosecuted, whereas the underlying systemic abuse, including discrimination from the shelters, are pertaining. So I wanted to continue to recognize the homeless who are denied services at our shelter. There's an elderly man who has shaggy, raggedy clothes out there. I asked him today if we could get him some clothes. There are just certain people that have different kinds of needs. So especially with the domestic violence or basic human needs, it feels that there needs to be a special kind of caseworker that can see the need and reach out to it where it is. I know that sometimes when I try to help people, my help is misperceived. And there's no easy way to advocate for people who are in pain or facing multiple kinds of abuse. But I think we could maybe reevaluate our systems to find ways to help people feel safe. And ultimately, housing won't be the only thing that makes you safe, but it is a good step to have a locking door and have impenetrability towards your personal safety. I know that sometimes abuse victims balance abusers because one abuser might keep you safe from another. So we need to look at the complexity of that. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate your passion and your insight. Thanks again. Do we have anyone else that signed up for public comment?
No, we don't.
All right. We'll go on to the consent calendar. You all had an opportunity to review the consent calendar. Any questions, comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
Second that motion.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Mr. Chair, could I just add one thing?
Yes.
Dr. Tom Duncan is on this consent calendar, and his devotion to community service and his persistence in that devotion is absolutely noteworthy, and I just appreciate his continued presence in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Appreciate you highlighting that. All right, the motion carries. Next is Commissioner reports. We'll start with, I don't know if Commissioner Toyoka can, not on at all.
You want to add his comments now or not?
I will. He was listening in during the discussion on SDRs, and this is policy, not enforcement policy. Not enforcement process. We have a code enforcement process. Adjust this as necessary, but don't create new requirements to create confusion and conflicts. He agrees with the permit fee adjustment. County cannot subsidize this fee, especially considering our upcoming challenges. And lessons have been learned, county health, prior notice, and commits essential, and I'm good with the $1,500. So that was his comments, and right in line, I think, with our discussion as well. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, yes, and we did have a community meeting, and we did have county presence there, for which I'm grateful. thank you. We looked at Dogami maps again, and we talked about community preparedness. And it was, on the whole, I think, a very positive meeting. I was grateful to have yourself present. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to continuing to develop our skills, collect our stuff, and enhance our relationships, because it's all three that are required in order to be as well prepared and to recover as well as possible afterward. There is the help and okay signs that go up. It's good to have these. Good to have a fire extinguisher. It's good to have a lot of stuff, but being ready to post these in your window so that our neighbors know what to do is a very good thing. I did attend the Board of Forestry and provided testimony. If anybody wanted to see the letter that I submitted as testimony, I have a copy here. If you don't want to hear it, that's okay too, but I gave testimony that was slightly different than that. I understand that there are some community members concerned for their perception of the well-being in their community who have questions and concerns that they've raised. The thrust of my particular testimony was, if there is a state statute that says that a Board of Forestry member cannot interfere with an active sale, that state statute should be both monitored and enforced by the Board of Forestry according to their rules. That was the thrust of my conversation. It's on them. I was trying to encourage their ethical integrity. I quoted my beloved grandpa and said, don't play slop pool. Do you know what slop pool is? Well, you have to call your shot. Okay, so if you're not somebody who plays pool, you can either call your ball and the hole in which you intend to sink it or not. If you don't put that ball in that hole, it doesn't count. It goes back on the table and you lose your turn. If you're playing slop pool, that's S-L-O-P, you just get to hit it, and if anything goes in anything, it's okay. So we want them to play ethical integrity, call their shots, and honor the statute when they're dealing with their affairs. The Council of Forest Trust Lands, Commissioner Bangs once again represents Clatsop County. I show up as often as possible so that Clatsop County has more than one voice in the conversation. It's a very complex situation that has profound impact on everything we do today and tomorrow and our future. It's our economy, it's our culture, it's our life. So thank you, Commissioner Bangs. I have notes. We had a District 7 meeting in this very room, and I think I failed my colleagues, and I think I failed the county because I haven't figured out how to integrate everything I'm doing at AOC with everything that we're doing as a board and everything that staff is doing. We haven't had a Clatsop County commissioner attend a lot of stuff. Commissioner Bangs is absolutely devoted to forestry, but I go to every single, one of my colleagues said to me, Leanne, you don't have to go to every single meeting. Well, yeah, I go to every single meeting because I want Clatsop County's interests presented there. And what that allows in spending that kind of time and that energy, that persistence over a decade, people know about us and they care about us. They want to share our concerns because we know when we're in relationship, they care about us and we care about them and we work together. And really that's the intention. That's why I do it. But when we had the District 7 meeting, we didn't have a robust commissioner presence, which I regret. We didn't have a robust staff presence, which I regret. I'll try and do better, and I ask you to help me with that. The reason AOC has district meetings is to prepare the organization to hear what's going on. District 7 is Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Lincoln counties. So we get together and we talk about what's going on in our counties, what are our concerns, our challenges, what do we want AOC to focus on when they're lobbying the legislature, because we're heading into the next legislative session. That's what we talk about. Then, that was on Monday, September 16th. That Friday and Saturday, AOC legislative and board committees met to develop legislative priorities and carry them forward. What I saw there was, even when I didn't bring up Clatsop County's concerns, commissioners from other counties raised them. So they hear us, they care about us, they understand what we need. Those relationships, I think, are solid, and I'm grateful for those. If you want to see any of the information, I have lots of meeting notes. I mean, I think that's my problem. I have so many meeting notes. There are so many actions and follow through. I'm really at a loss as to how to present them all so that we can be integrated. I will highlight one thing that I think is particularly significant. When we talked about public safety, the priority for the Public Safety Committee at AOC is to actually get the cost of community corrections covered. The last study was in 2006. That's almost 20 years ago. The current allocation is $13 and some cents per person per day, based on 2006. Now think about inflation and every other increase. Right now, the actual cost is $18.18 per day per person. That's the cost to provide community correction services. We know that those are the things that allow successful reintegration and reduce recidivism. So that if we're going to keep people on the right path to be constructive community members, we have to pay what it takes to support them and to monitor them. So that's the one thing I want to talk about. I've been our Coastal Commissioner on the Land Conservation and Development Commission. It's a foundational piece in Oregon, in everything that happens in Oregon, because it regulates conservation and development of land and water. So these are the folks who set the rules. How they set the rules, how they support implementation of the rules, and how they listen to us, I think, are critical. Did I see that book? When I was at AOC at the legislative retreat, we got training, because, you know, it's always good to have training, right? It's the Arbinger Institute, and they're talking about how to have a heart that is at peace as opposed to having a heart that is at war. We could go on for hours and days and whatever. The point is, how do we have constructive relationships with each other? I think at the county commission level, in our neighborhoods, and everywhere, if we can focus out on how to have constructive relationships where we're able to speak truthfully to each other with a heart that's at peace, that's the goal. That's my summary. I'm headed back for LCDC. Tonight I'll drive to Salem, and then tomorrow be at Freris Brothers Lumber Company up in the Santiam Canyon in Lyons again, because me and my husband and my dog already been up there. It's very cool. And then 2 days of hearings. And then next Monday and Tuesday, I'm in Bend as part of the County Commissioner Exchange.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll be back Wednesday. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Again, appreciate all your leadership in AOC and Department of Forestry. Really appreciate your testimony. Doing a lot. That's what it takes. I mean, I know we're all busy, so sometimes a divide and conquer strategy, and appreciate you reporting out and telling us all you're doing. Always want to do. Oh, doing a good job. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
So, a lot of exciting things happening, with CFEDC and Oregon Women in Timber putting on an amazing sixth grade forestry tour for the sixth graders in our community. It rained on our parade all morning, and we were a soggy mess, but the kids had a wonderful time. They learned new information. I think that that is, above all, the goal of the entities is to educate. I even learned something new this morning too, so that was pretty amazing. I had never thought about the wildlife conservatory came and did a little booth, and I had never thought about cats retracting their claws as something that they did when you're looking at little animal tracks. I just never, I mean, yes, they retract their claws. I just never thought about it. So it was a lot of fun. The kids ate mushroom cookies. You would think that that was disgusting. It tasted great, so good job, Fort Stevens Rangers. They baked for the kids. I thought that was amazing also. So all of the booths did a great job today. The kids learned things, the adults learned things. Nobody got stung today by a bee, which was a first. Oh, well, I mean, we had a series last year. It was pretty bad. But yeah, wonderful time. And hopefully tomorrow goes just as well. I'm sure the booths practiced on the kids from Napa and Astoria today. So Seaside and others, I think, Seaside and Warrenton will be tomorrow for sixth grade. So that was just a great highlight of fun for our community. Just continuing to meet with, you know, our traditional liaisons, nothing too exciting with Northwest Senior and Disability Services. We do have a retirement of Tanya. She is retiring, so her retirement party is coming up. She has done an amazing job. She has just been a very consistent employee in Northwest Senior Disability Services for us, and a good representative of those who need her. And so she's done a great job. I'll be sad to see her go. I'm interested to see who replaces her. But moving on from Northwestern Senior Disability Services, my other liaisons are pretty quiet. I'm not often able to visit with I just blanked. I'm sorry, I apologize. No, it'll come back to me. Misty Osier. I don't get to communicate with her. Thank you. Soil and Water Conservation, yes, but Misty always gives me a call if there's a concern, and so I feel like no news is good news these days. And moving on from that to the Board of Forestry meeting, that was an exciting listen that morning. You both did an amazing job on your testimonies. It is always good for more of Clatsop County to have their voice heard in regards to what is happening to us, and it's happening to us. We're unable to it's very similar to the FEMA BIOP. We're very unable to stop the train from running us over in that regard. So I appreciated your voices, and it was just wonderful to see and hear. After that was the CFTLC meeting, which, again, thank you, Commissioner Thompson, for being there. My personality really showed throughout that meeting. That was fun. It was a very good review in the newspaper. I was actually impressed my personality didn't show up. But, you know, all that aside, if you want a good listen and maybe a good laugh or whatever, you could go ahead and plug yourself into that. We finally made a motion. That was good. that motion, was to create legislation, to hopefully solve our financial, difficulties that we will be facing as a county, but also as a state. I continue to become frustrated with the fact that we are trying to solve a problem that is not our creation, and that this should have been solved before the state board made a decision. I will always circle back to that I feel like, the legislation that's gonna be coming forward, I worry it's not gonna pass. I worry that we're not gonna be able to write it. And if we don't get it done now, I worry that it'll ever get done, because we'll then lose the momentum of the conversation. And so I am forever hopeful that the governor's office becomes more involved in the legislation creation, because I do know that there is a method in order to move forward and to keep all groups whole, or as whole as possible, because I don't think that we'll ever be completely whole because we've lost our economics. So, yeah, there's all kinds of fun to be had. I am appreciative of Commissioner Thompson's ability to come and serve her community, as time allows, and I am always grateful for ever the representation that she is able to provide. And often I have to remind myself that many of us on this board, we're volunteers. And so as a volunteer, I cannot be everywhere at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m., but I can certainly put my best effort forward to serve my community in the manner that I was elected, under the umbrella of which we are in. And so I am grateful that you use your time in the manner that you use your time. So hopefully, you know, we can be everywhere by just being 5 of us. So anyhow, that's it for this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Banks, and I know what a difficult and challenging time this has been with those 3 alternatives and having to make a decision on behalf of counties. I think you made the best decision you could have out of that meeting, and I'm going to remain optimistic that we're going to get what we need out of that to make us whole.
I hope so.
But, again, you keep fighting the good fight for us, and thanks for all you've done. We met with Colpack, Commissioner Garrett from Columbia County, and myself, along with Sarah Lou Heath, who's the interim director, and decided on the agenda for the next meeting. And the good news is we're going to be focusing on the FEMA buyout for about the whole day, for most of the day. So that should be a very good discussion. Oregon Solutions will be there as well as Betsy Johnson, talking about alternative strategies and how we can address the problem going forward. And we also are going to meet as a NOAA nominating committee, Commissioner Magruder and Commissioner Bell, to talk about officers for next year for NOAA. And I did receive news today that I was appointed to the Ocean Policy Advisory Council. So that was great news. It was, I found out it was in an email today that Governor Kotek had appointed me to that position. So fantastic.
Nice.
So I'm very excited to get started there. And lastly, I won't be here at the next meeting because I will be going to Indianapolis. We are going to be talking to the Healthcare Design Conference about our project at Columbia Memorial Hospital. So it's getting national recognition as one of the first NAMI vertical evacuation structures within a hospital. It's unlike any other hospital that's going to be in the country. So people are taking notice of it, and it became kind of exciting to be there with the engineer and the architect to talk more in detail to people that are interested in that kind of thing. So, and there's actual stuff happening on campus. So the bus barn and the locker rooms have been leveled, and it's really changed the landscape around the hospital right now. And it's exciting to see things happening. So And with that, that's all I have.
So you're gonna be in the ocean, I'm in the trees, you're on the land.
On the road somewhere.
We're, I feel like
Got it all covered.
almost. What's next?
All right. County manager.
Chair Queelam, members of the board, I don't have anything other than what we talked about in the work session today, so nothing new. Thank you.
All right. Well, do we have anything for the good of the order? All right, not seeing anything. We'll go ahead and adjourn.